Beloved, today's Feast of the Holy Family offers us a chance to meditate upon one of the principal virtues of family life, that of obedience. For it is the virtue of children towards their parents and also the wife towards her husband. Near the end of today's Gospel, we hear that after the incident in the temple, Jesus went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject to them. He, though God, was subject to Joseph and Mary and obeyed their commands concerning the governance of the household. And this obedience was not only characteristic of our Lord's early life, but his whole life. As he said to the crowds, "I came down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him that sent me." St. Thomas Aquinas places the virtue of obedience under the heading of justice. It is justice towards God in that he has established the order in human life of superior and subject, and it is justice towards the superior who deserves obedience because of his place in that divine ordering. Aquinas defines obedience as promptness in fulfilling the will of another. Promptness is important since the virtue is found not only in doing what we're asked to do, but also in doing it over and against what we are doing right now or would rather do. To delay in fulfilling a command also takes away from the harmony and the peace that comes from a well-ordered household. Greater than this harmony, though, is the value of the virtue in itself. The moral virtues, as distinct from the theological virtues, are great in relation to the earthly good that they set aside to do the will of God. And of all our earthly goods, our will is the greatest good, because it is by that we make use of other goods, including our minds. And so to willingly obey another and to set aside our own will in that instance is a very virtuous act. It is greater than giving up external goods like possessions or goods of the body like pleasures of food and drink. Obedience is even greater when it is motivated by the theological virtues, for then it is elevated beyond mere human considerations. To obey someone is to express faith that the will of a legitimate superior is the will of God. It expresses hope that in obedience the subject can be assured that he has done God's will at that moment. And it expresses charity in submitting to a man for the love of God. As St. Paul says in Ephesians, not as it were pleasing men, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from our hearts. In addition to these fundamental points about the virtue, it's good also to consider that in obedience there is virtue on both sides, both superior and subject. The superior's virtue consists in the courage and the care to govern others, and to have faith that despite his deficiencies, God will work through him, if he is just and good. The subject's virtue is the humility required to submit to another person, in particular when the other is a peer or an equal in age and dignity. And again, faith is needed to see the superior's command as the will of God. To ever bear these things in mind, and this saving complementarity is very helpful both in asking obedience of others and being obedient ourselves. Lastly, some practical suggestions. For superiors, it's important that he himself be an obedient man, that he submit to his own legitimate superiors, both to learn what obedience feels like and also to guard against pride. He should work as hard as he expects others to, lest his commands come to be despised through his laziness. He should command according to the common good of the family, to which good he owes a type of obedience, rather than governed by his own personal whims. And he should be mindful of the abilities and the needs of his subjects, knowing when to ask more of someone and when to allow for less, because prudence lies in part in adapting to this day's circumstances, to the needs of my family today. For subjects, above all, it's important to pray for the superior, that he be wise and courageous and whatever other virtue that he wants him to exhibit. Superiors do not become excellent without the help of their subjects' earnest and daily prayers. Subjects should also think often about the benefits of obedience. In it, we imitate our Lord Christ. We conquer our pride. We also have clarity about God's will. Despite all the things that we could or do or should do at any moment, if we have fulfilled a command, we have done God's will in that instance and should derive peace from that. And lastly, obedience is the most perfect actually when we do something because of the command rather than because of our own agreement with the command interiorly. So when our will is crossed, the merit of obedience is greatest. This is true even when the good that we were planning to do is put aside by the command of a superior to do something else, even the good of prayer. In speaking about these things, which are delicate and difficult, remember that religious life carries with it the daily exercise of obedience. And so I speak not only from the Summa, but also from experience. I know the power of obedience, especially when the command runs contrary to my will. And I also know the bad fruit of disobedience and resentment. It is true that each superior is fallible and does not know all the things that we wish that he would know. But it is also true, as St. Gregory says, that one who despises obedience cannot be innocent, although he may seem justified in his own eyes. Since obedience is our lot in this life, we must come to see its value and even come to love it by the grace of God. It is a sure source of humility and also a conquest of pride. It is certainty and peace amid the many variables of our lives. And it is also a pledge of future glory. For our Lord was obedient to his Father in all things, for which cause God has exalted him and has given him a name which is above all other names. Through our obedience in this life, we shall come to merit exaltation in the next life, where harmony shall always prevail and all things shall be sweet to us.